لا إله إلا الله.
Somebody was asking me, like, if I knew where that, like, this area was in Virginia. I was like, you know where it is? I was like, and they go, no, I mean, that's
The original. This is the brother. Yes, the real brother.
Yes, sir. Maybe we get rid of for us a little bit.
No.
For you or something.
You should.
I heard you got a lot of money.
All right.
No. Careful, man. You might lose.
الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. So we'll dive right in because we're running a little bit. Muhammad, I'm sorry. We'll dive right in because we're running a little late. So welcome to another installment in our weekly series studying the sermon, where we revisit the sermon today, talk about a little bit of additional detail, and offer you the opportunity to contribute to the discussion in a meaningful way, in the way that you choose, whether it is by asking questions, giving your feedback, mentioning a personal experience with the story or with the topic, or even by critiquing the subject, if you so choose. And the title of today's khutbah was What Islam Says About Weed. What Islam Says About Weed. And the main idea of the khutbah can basically be summarized in 3 points. Number 1, to educate our community on the role of the Prophet ﷺ as a legislator. Number 2, to educate our community regarding the Islamic ruling on weed and other intoxicants. And number 3, to debunk misconceptions surrounding weed and weed smoking. Now the question always comes, why? Why this topic? And the answer is twofold. One is because I have received a number of complaints from members complaining that when they come for Salat al-Jum'ah, the smell of weed on some members is very strong. It offends them. And also the smell lingers in the masjid. I've also had my own personal experience where people have come to the mosque and I've interacted with them and I could smell the smell of marijuana on their clothing, on their body, on their hair, and even on their breath. Before we revisit the khutbah and recap it and mention some additional points, I want to mention that if something happens in a Muslim community, that thing that happened does not have to reach epidemic proportions before it is spoken about. It doesn't have to reach epidemic proportions in order for us to talk about it. Some people will say, well, it's not a chronic problem. It has not reached epidemic proportions. So why do you mention it in a khutbah? I want to mention our beloved Prophet ﷺ. It was not uncommon for an individual, as Aisha radiallahu anha, she mentioned in one of her narrations, she mentioned that كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا بلغه عن الرجل. The Prophet ﷺ, if he heard that a man, an individual, had done something, لم يقل ما بال فلان. He wouldn't say, what's the deal with fulan, and mention him by name. He wouldn't expose him. The Prophet, for example, went to the market and the person was cheating people. He wouldn't go to the member and say, so-and-so is cheating people. But he would go to the member and say, ما بال أقوال. What do you say? What is the deal with people who do such and such and so and so? He would address it. Because if one person is doing it that you see, you witness, you experience, They're probably what other people are doing. Or if that person does it and it's not addressed, people will think that it must be okay because it wasn't addressed. No disapproval was articulated. And even, so that's enough. I don't want to spend too much time on that. I just want to say that we don't have a chronic problem. We don't have like 50% or 70% of our community who's doing this. But it's enough of a problem that people need to know. It's not okay. They need to know that. The second thing I want to mention is that this phenomenon, the trend of Muslims who are weed smokers, this is one of the problems of living amongst non-believers. This is one of the problems that's presented by living amongst the non-believers. The Prophet ﷺ, in one of his hadith about Dawood on the authority of Jabir ibn Abdullah, he said, أنا بريء من كل مسلم يقيم بين أظهر المشركين. Prophet said in the hadith, he said, I am free, I take no responsibility for any Muslim who voluntarily resides in the midst of the idolaters, in the midst of the disbelievers. So some of the Prophet's companions who were present when he made this statement, they said, Ya Rasulullah, lima? They said, why? Why, O Messenger of Allah? The Prophet responded by saying, La tara'a narahuma. He said, their fires should not be visible to one another. They should be so much distance between the believers and the non-believers in terms of their residence, their cities, their towns, the places where they live and reside. That back in that time, it should be so far apart that what? That the fire of one cannot be perceived or is not visible to the other. There should be what? Distance between them. And the reason why the Prophet said this is the same reason why he told Mu'adh ibn Jabal when he sent him to Yemen as his ambassador. Yemen, he was sending him to Al-Yemen as his ambassador. He told him, he said, Ittaqillah haythuma kunt. He told him, fear Allah wherever you may be. And the reason why the Prophet ﷺ, he did that is the same reason why he said, I don't like it, I free myself of people who live amongst idolaters, because the Prophet was worried that people are more often than not products of their environment, products influenced by their surroundings. And he feared that if the Muslims take up residence in the lands of the non-Muslims, if they intermingle with them to this extent, to this degree, that one, their faith and religious commitment would be diluted. It would be diluted. And number two, they will start to adopt some of their bad habits, some of the bad habits of the non-believers. And this obviously includes the consumption of intoxicants and controlled substances like weed, right? You're amongst the non-believers, and the more you're amongst some people who do the opposite of what you do, things that you, under normal circumstances, initially consider to be wrong, the more that you're in their presence and they're doing these wrong things, the more you begin to normalize it. The more you become desensitized to it, numb to it. It's not as a big deal as it was before what? Before you were constantly exposed to it. As they say, كَثَرَةُ الْإِمْسَاسِ تُذْهِبُ الْإِحْسَاسِ. The more you become in contact with something, the more you become familiar with something, comfortable with something, the more what? You become complacent. Right? The more you accept it. You normalize it. The next thing I want to point out, we start out the khutbah by basically emphasizing and stressing the Prophet ﷺ is Allah's deputy in legislating. Deputy in terms of at-tashri', legislating. And we mentioned two verses from Surah Al-A'raf, back to back, 157 and 158, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the Prophet as يَأْمُرُهُمْ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَاهُمْ الْمُنْكَرِ وَيُحِلُّ لَهُمُ الطَّيِّبَاتِ وَيُحَرِّمُ عَلَيْهِمْ الْخَبَائِثَ. He enjoins upon his followers what is good, forbids them what is bad, legalizes for them what is pure, and bans for them what is impure. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this ayat, he further indicates that it is his expectation that we obey the Prophet ﷺ and follow him in whatever he prohibits. And Allah says it more expressly, more explicitly in the other verse of the Quran. Later on in the Quran, he says, وَمَا أَتَاكُمُ الرَّسُولُ فَخُذُوهُ وَمَا نَهَاكُمْ عَنْهُ فَانْتَهُوا. He says, whatever the Prophet gives you, take it, and whatever he prohibits you, what? Cease and desist. Don't engage in that. Now the Prophet ﷺ and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, They have blessed us, they have given us, they have left us a living revelation. A living revelation. Unlike the revelation of al-Yahud, the Jews, the revelation of the Nasara, the Christian. Our revelation is a living revelation. What does that mean? It means that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His messenger, legalize or prohibit something, they're not only legalizing or prohibiting the specific thing mentioned, but also any and everything that shares that thing's characteristics and can be included in its category. Unless we have evidence to the contrary. Otherwise, if it wasn't the case, if that wasn't the case, the Sharia would only be applicable to the time and place in which it was initially revealed, 7th century Mecca and Medina. The beautiful thing about our religion, it's what? It gives you general principles that can be applied in every what? In every time and every space. You can practice Islam everywhere. And Islam will never become what? Outdated. It will always adapt to the circumstances, adapt to the times, adapt to the place. Y'all see that? It's a living revelation. And Ibn Taymiyyah, he gave an example of this, or he expounded on this, or he expanded on this, as it relates to what? The prohibition of al-khamr, which, as we said, should most correctly or most appropriately be translated as intoxicants, not wine. Because when we say wine, people think it's just what? It's just alcoholic beverages. Ibn Taymiyyah, I'm going to read what he said in English just for the sake of time. He said, our Prophet ﷺ was blessed with concise but comprehensive speech, jawami al-kalim. So if he uses a comprehensive expression, broad in meaning, it must be considered to encompass everything to which that expression can be applied, regardless of whether they are the exact same forms of that expression that existed in his time and in the place where he lived or not. So when he said, kullu khamrin haram, every khamr is forbidden. That included what existed in Medina of intoxicating drinks made from dates and so on. What was common to them, when they thought of wine, they thought of what? Wine made from dates. Y'all see that? Because that's what was common to them. That's what was available to them. But it also included what existed in Yemen of intoxicating drinks made from wheat, barley, and honey. The people in Yemen, when they made alcohol, they made it from different things. The things that were common to their what? To their environment. But when the Prophet said, kullu khamrin haram, he didn't mean khamr from dates only. He meant khamr regardless of what it's made from. Whether it's what's made from certain things that are common in Medina and its surrounding areas, or even what's common now in his time in the Yemen. And even what became common, as Ibn Taymiyyah mentions, he says, it also includes what was introduced later of alcoholic drinks made from mare's milk, which was common amongst the Turks and others. None of the scholars differentiated between intoxicants made from mare's milk or intoxicants made from wheat and barley, even though one of them existed and one was known at the time of the Prophet and the other was not known at that time. Because no one in the Arab world would have made alcoholic beverages from mare's milk. They didn't even know about that. Right? But that didn't mean that when the Prophet said it, years before, that it didn't include what? Because when the Prophet said al-khamr, it includes what? Everything that has the same meaning and the same characteristics and the same qualities. So when the Prophet says, for example, kullu khamrin haram, all khamr is forbidden. Yes, a highly specific meaning occurred to the people he initially addressed. When the Arabs of his time in Medina and Mecca, when they heard that, the first thing that occurred to them was what? Alcohol made from dates. Alcoholic beverages made from dates. But only because that was the form that was commonly known to them. You can't perceive something that you're not aware of. But not because, so when the Prophet said this is what they perceived, because that was commonly or exclusively known to them, but not because it was the only form he intended to ban. That's not how the scholars have understood it historically. Historically, the scholars have understood, and it's their ijma', it is their consensus, unanimous consensus, that anything that intoxicates, regardless of what you call it, regardless of what it's made from, is what? It's haram. Tayyib. It's also important to note here that when Allah and His Messenger prohibit something, they are prohibiting everything associated with it. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or the Messenger, if they prohibit intoxicants, It means it's prohibited to what? To consume them. But it's also prohibited to what? To grow them. It's also prohibited to sell them, to buy them. It's also prohibited to manufacture them or to store them. Y'all see that? This is very, very important. Because you have people who, they don't smoke it. They don't consume it. But they sell it to make money. You have people who, they don't necessarily sell it in its manufactured form, but they grow what? They grow the plants and sell the what? The plants. All of that is what prohibited. Once Allah and His Messenger prohibit something, they prohibit everything that is connected to it. The next thing that we mentioned or we stressed and emphasized in the khutbah was that when God's law says no, the answer is no. Even if man's law says yes, this is important because a lot of people, Allah knows best, they smoke weed because it's what? It's legal. It's legal what? In Virginia. And they say, well, it's not against the law. And so they engage in it. But is alcohol legal in Virginia? Alcohol is legal everywhere, isn't it? Legal everywhere. What about wearing revealing clothing, inappropriate attire, a woman walking up and down the street in a bathing suit? Is that permissible? Is that legal, I should say? Is that legal in Virginia? Absolutely. Nothing wrong with that. What about dating? Dating. A man going out with a woman and a woman going out with a man and being alone and talking, trying to get to know each other. Going to the movies together, or going to a restaurant together. Is that legal? Is that a crime in Virginia? Not a crime in Virginia. What about premarital or extramarital intimate relationships? Is that legal in Virginia? Certainly it is. What about adultery? Adultery is legal. Adultery is legal, yeah. What about gold and silk for men? Can I go get one of big rope chains? But all of these, what do all of these have in common? What do all these have in common? They're all what? Legal in according to man's law. Man says go ahead and do it. But in God's law, they're what? They're haram. And I think most people, they understand that. They understand that they can't drink alcohol. They understand that they can't be alone with a woman. They can't have an extramarital affair, etc. But for some reason, when it comes to weed, it's okay because what? Because Virginia law allows it. So all of these, brothers, are examples of things that man's law has allowed, God's law has prohibited, and all of them are examples of things that Muslims are expected to abstain from despite being legal according to the law of the land. But we got into the meat and potatoes of the khutbah, and that was the lies we tell ourselves, the shubuhat, the dubious assertions and the lies we tell ourselves to justify the consumption of weed. The lies Muslims or some Muslims tell themselves about weed. Number one, we said the Quran forbids wine, not weed. They go to the verse in Surah Al-Ma'idah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّمَا الْخَمْرُ وَالْمَيْسِرُ إِلَى آخِرِ الْآيَةِ. They say that this khamr refers to what? Wine, alcoholic beverages, and therefore that's the only thing that's prohibited. But we mentioned the hadith, we opened with the hadith in which the Prophet said, كُلُّ مُسْكِرٍ خَمْرٍ وَكُلُّ مُسْكِرٍ خَمْرٍ وَكُلُّ خَمْرٍ حَرَامٍ. He said everything that intoxicates is called khamr, and everything that is khamr is what? Is haram. So basically, when Allah says al-khamr, the appropriate way to intoxicate and to understand it is that it refers to what? Intoxicants of all kinds. Whether they are eaten, whether they are drunk, like beverages, whether they are snorted, like cocaine, and whether they are smoked, like most often marijuana. Okay? The second one, we said the second dubious assertion that people make is, I don't consume enough to get high. And we answered that by saying that whatever, as the Prophet said in the hadith, مَا أَسْكَرَ كَثِيرُهُ فَقَلِيلُهُ حَرَامٌ. That whatever a large amount of it can make you inebriated, make you intoxicated, then a small amount of it is what? It's prohibited, right? It doesn't matter that you didn't get high. If it's an intoxicant, any amount of it Even the smallest amount of it is what? Is prohibited. Tafsir by that, we mentioned the third shubha that we mentioned in the khutbah, we can suffice ourselves with that. And that was that medicinal marijuana is an exception. Medicinal marijuana is an exception. We push back against that, as many scholars do. And we mentioned those hadith where the Prophet ﷺ was asked by people. For example, he was asked by Tariq ibn Suwayd, an al-khamr, a sana'at al-khamr. He asked him, is it permissible for me to manufacture wine? فَنَهَاهُ ﷺ, the Prophet prohibited him, said, no, you can't do that. He said, إِنَّمَا أَصْنَعُهُ لِلدَّوَاءِ. He said, I only make it as a medicine. And the Prophet said, لَيْسَ دَوَاءً إِنَّمَا هُوَ الدَّاء. He said, it is not a medicine, it itself is a disease. طيب ثم بعد ذلك what if, as we said, there's some debate amongst the scholars about medicinal marijuana. There's some debate. We did admit that in the khutbah. But what we need to understand is even if we take the opinion of those scholars who permit what is called medicinal marijuana, we have to understand that they're permitting it in the case of what? Al-darura. And they're basing that on the qaida that says al-darurat tubih al-mahdurat. That extreme necessity will legalize that which is normally illegal. But we have to understand, it's a lot of things, it's a sad thing, a lot of people, they love to take something, take a part of it, just because what? It will benefit them and let them take advantage or have a concession that they're really not entitled to. So I want to make sure that we understand this concept of al-darura and understand this qaida al-darurat tubih al-mahdurat. That extreme necessity will legalize that which is normally illegal. This principle is based upon a number of nusus, number of religious texts from the Quran and Hadith, one of them being the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when she says, فَمَنْ اضْطُرَّ غَيْرَ بَاغٍ وَلَا عَادٍ فَلَا إِثْمَ عَلَيْهِ. The meaning of the ayah basically is, so whoever, he was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaking in the context of certain things which are haram to what? To consume. Right? He says, don't do this, and this is prohibited. And then after saying that, he says, فَمَنْ اضْطُرَّ غَيْرَ بَاغٍ. But as for he who is forced due to extreme necessity to partake of any of these prohibited things, and he does so غَيْرَ بَاغٍ, and he doesn't what? He does not desire the haram. He doesn't have a desire to what? To find a loophole to do the haram. وَلَا عَادٍ, and he doesn't exceed the bounds. فَلَا إِثْمَ عَلَيْهِ. In his case, if he were to consume these normally prohibited things, there would be no sin upon him. So now, from these statements, now listen, from the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the scholars have taken the shurut, the conditions for the exception, the conditions that we have, the boxes we have to check in order for us to be allowed to what? To take advantage of what? The concession of al-darura, right? To be able to say, I can do this haram thing because of what? Because of necessity. Y'all see that? It's not willy-nilly. It's not for me to say, oh, darura, and then what? And then just start doing all kind of haram things. Y'all see that? But rather, there has to be certain boxes I check, and if those boxes are checked, then I'm what? I'm allowed to partake of it. So the first one is Allah says, فَمَنِ الضُّرَّ. Right? So if a person, in this case, for example, they're going to partake of medicinal marijuana, there has to be what? A legitimate need. Y'all see that? There has to be a legitimate need. A person can't be completely healthy. Right? There's no ailment that he suffers from. But he goes and says, I'm going to use medicinal marijuana. He can't do that because there's no necessity. There's no necessity. The first box he has to check has to be what? An extreme need or just a slight need? Extreme need. That's the first one. But the second one is that this illness or this haram thing that he's going to partake of has to be something which has the ability to be muzilan lid-darura. It has to be something that can actually what? Remove the necessity. Get rid of the necessity. Y'all see that? So for example, a person can't be sick. He's legitimately sick. Serious illness. But there is no evidence to indicate, and no doctor who prescribes marijuana to treat this what? This illness. Y'all see that? Person has, for example, he has cataracts, for example. He has cataracts. And it's really, really bad. He's losing his sight. And he says, I'm sick. It's a very serious thing to lose your sight. This will cause me to lose my job. It'll cause me to lose my ability to drive and move myself around. I'll have to be dependent upon other people to guide me, to take care of me, and so on and so forth. That's pretty serious, right? That's a pretty serious illness. So he says, okay, since I have a darura, since I have an illness, I can go ahead and take medicinal marijuana. La la la. Because if there's no evidence to support that this marijuana will do what? Will treat the cataracts. Then is he allowed to take it? No, because it's not muzilan lid-darura. It's not something that will remove the darura. Y'all see that? Then the next one, Allah says, غَيْرَ عَادٍ. I'm sorry, غَيْرَ بَاغٍ. He can't what? He can't desire the haram, which means like I want this, so I'm just looking for any excuse. Y'all see that? So, what that means is, what the scholars took from that is that the only way you can take advantage of a haram thing, alternative. Y'all see that? There has to be no halal alternative. So let's say there are 3 halal medicines on the market that have been clinically proven to treat X condition. And there are some studies, clinical studies, that show that marijuana there are indications that marijuana can also treat it too. Y'all see that? That person can't say, you know what, I'm going to do the marijuana. I'm going to not do the other 3 permissive ones. Y'all see that? Because if he did that, he would be battling. He would be desiring, going after the haram, even though what? There are permissible alternatives. Y'all see that? That's the 3rd box he has to check. There can't be any other permissible alternative. Number 4, Allah says, وَلَا عَادٍ. وَلَا عَادٍ. He can't exceed the bounds, which means that he can only take from the haram biqadar ad-darura. He can only take from the haram to the extent that it required to what? To remove the necessity. Y'all see that? So in this case, let's say for example the doctor says, okay, in order for you to treat X illness, I'm going to prescribe for you medicinal marijuana. And this is how much you take every day at these times in order to what? To see improvement. To treat, for example, a certain cancer, let's say. So instead of doing that, he does what? He smokes it layla nahar. He smokes it night and day. And he does that why? Because he likes it. In that case, he would be doing what? He would be transgressing, going beyond what is needed. He can only take as much as is necessary to what? To remove the darura. Last but not least from the conditions is that, in this case, this drug that he's going to take, this marijuana he's going to take, if it's going to cause greater harm than the actual what? Disease itself. If the side effects of it are greater than the benefits. Or it may resolve this issue but create other issues. It's not allowed, it's not permissible, it's not permissible in that case. And that's based upon the statement of the Prophet when he said, La darar wa la dirar. That a person should not harm others, nor should they do harm to self. So it's very, very important because what people do is, they will hear, for example, this qaida, that necessity will permit what is normally not permitted. And they take that and run with it. And they start doing what? Doing all types of haram things without considering what? The condition that the scholars put in order for that to be applied. But a couple more things I want to mention. One of them is I want us to understand the rulings based upon what we've said of marijuana. But the main thing in marijuana that makes it a narcotic, makes it an intoxicant, is something called THC. something called THC. طيب. So if you have marijuana or any other product that contains THC, it will be what? What will be the original ruling of that? It will be haram. It will be prohibited. طيب. So the first ruling of this marijuana or anything containing THC is that if you consume the amount that intoxicates, it will be what? Impermissible. If you consume the amount that doesn't intoxicate, it will be what? Impermissible. طيب. Now, suppose you consume the amount that doesn't harm you, it doesn't affect you. So for example, you're in the presence of other people who are doing it and you're just getting the secondhand smoke. But you're in the company of what? People doing haram things, and you're resembling what? And you're accomplice to haram. So in this case, that would also be what? Haram, impermissible. طيب. Suppose a person uses it for its medicinal benefits, and they use it without becoming intoxicated, and the benefit of using it outweighed the harm. Let me say that again. They're using it for its medicinal benefits and using it for medicinal purpose, and they're using it without becoming intoxicated, and they're using it, and the benefit of it outweighs what? The harm. They actually are going periodically checking with a physician and seeing that the cancer is actually what? It's getting weaker, it's getting smaller. The tumor is getting smaller. You know that? What would the ruling then be? Huh? Allah knows best. It would be what? It would be halal. Like what if a person has severe need? They have a situation of darura. They are dying, and marijuana has been clinically shown to help with whatever they're suffering from. But they have some like serious disease, some neurological disease. And marijuana has clinically been shown to treat this disease and to help you manage it and mitigate its symptoms. They have this darura, and they smoke it as prescribed by a doctor until they reach a state of intoxication. Smoke it, prescribed by a doctor, and they do exactly what the doctor says. But the amount that the doctor prescribes leads to intoxication. And their situation is a situation of what? Darura. What would it be? Be careful now, think about it. Think about it. Don't be hasty. Don't be hasty. Think about everything we just said. Everything we just said. Alright? For it to be permissible. You understand that? Person has, for example, some severe neurological disorder. It's been clinically proven that marijuana can benefit in this case. The doctor prescribes a certain amount. So the first thing you got to ask yourself, is it darura? Okay, we check that box. Doctor prescribes a certain amount. And that amount is what? It's helping. Right? It is actually helping. But that amount also leads to what? Intoxication. When the person takes it according as prescribed, they get what? They get intoxicated. Permissible or impermissible?
Find another doctor. Prescribe too much.
Say prescribe it too much.
No, it is not permissible in that case because the person gets intoxicated.
You have to see which more, I guess.
Wallahi,
They cannot pray, they cannot do anything.
Wallahi, the general, a lot of scholars, many scholars, and I think the general view of the scholars is that it is permitted in that case. It's permitted in that case. Yeah, it's permitted. It's permitted.
You're the mufti for that.
Like, I'm not being a mufti, I'm just telling you. But I will say this is that we have to be very, very careful here, Juan. And the reason why I say this, and
You can die in state of intoxication.
it kind of relates to what Dr. Ali said before, what he said before. And that is that A lot of the studies that have been done, thorough studies, have disproven the effectiveness of marijuana in the treatment of many diseases that's been claimed that they treat. And the clinical studies that seem to show some positive effects are
Neurological.
those studies have been criticized, they've been critiqued. And a lot of people say that it hasn't been done in a broad enough testing, and it could be a placebo effect. You guys know what a placebo effect is, right? It's like you tell somebody comes in, I got such and such so-and-so. And you say, hey, take this, and it's a sugar pill. You say, hey, this has been clinically proven. To what? To treat whatever you have. And they start taking these sugar pills. It's just a sugar pill. It's nothing. It's just a placebo. They take it and they say, oh, man, this stuff is working, man. Thank you for that. Can I get some more of that? And it's what? It's more what? It's more in their head than anything else. I say this to say that we have to be careful when it comes to this meal. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us all from in a situation where we're offered or prescribed something haram to treat our illnesses. But we do have situations where people have very, very severe illnesses and they have very, very severe pain. And they're given opioids. They're given morphine, basically, right? Which is a narcotic drug, right? A very serious one. And it's not just narcotic, it's what? Extremely addictive. Extremely addictive, right? But the last thing I want to say before we open the floor for any comments or questions or critiques that you may have is that I wish I would have made this clear in the khutbah, and that is that I was not trying to put anybody on the spot, embarrass anyone, or belittle anyone. And I do understand that some people, regardless of what their ethnic background is, regardless of their culture is, they become addicted to marijuana. They become addicted to it. It is an addiction. It is a health crisis for them. And those people need help. We're not blaming them. We're not, calling them names. We're not judging them. We're just saying that we need to understand what this is. We need to understand how we as Muslims have to conduct ourselves in a non-Muslim society. It's also important for us to teach our kids, because our kids are getting exposed. This is the problem with, one of the many problems of public school. This is everywhere. This is everywhere, and it's being experimented with by kids who are younger and younger. And our kids are under a tremendous amount of pressure to fit in. They're under a tremendous amount of pressure to fit in. And part of fitting in is doing things like vaping, doing things like smoking and experimenting with drugs and alcohol. Part of fitting in is girls and boys, dating and having girlfriends and boyfriends. And our kids are under a lot of pressure. And that's why it's so important too. One of the reasons why we try to do so many things that are youth-related, youth-oriented, is because we want to help the youth be religiously grounded, spiritually grounded. We want to help them feel comfortable in their own Muslim skin. Help them feel confident enough to tell people, I'm not doing that. And not be moved by any type of peer pressure. Have that, that be independent-minded. Where you stand your ground. And you make people respect you for having religious principles. Y'all see that? A lot of our kids are not there. Why? Because they're not spiritually grounded. They're not. And they're just trying to survive. They're just trying to go to school and not be called names. And so this is one of the reasons why we do so many youth-related things. And the sad thing is that, as I'll say, and as the saying goes, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. And we have a lot of people in the community who their kids could really, really benefit from the programs we offer. They don't come. I understand sometimes kids are not, they give their parents a hard time. Parents get exhausted. They get tired of fighting with the kids. And they just give up. But some things are worth fighting for. Some things are worth fighting for. And there are things that we can do better. We really want to hear from the kids. How can we make the program more appealing to them? We want to hear from them. We want to make the program appealing to them. But again, it takes two hands to what? 2 hands to clap. We're trying, man. We're swinging arms, we're flailing arms, man. But we just need what? We need the other side to clap with us. And with that, brothers and sisters, we will bring today's comments and remarks to a close, and we open the floor for any questions, comments, or critiques you may have. Tafaddalu mashkourin. Anyone? I have a mic for the sisters. If you guys have a question. Anyone?
I don't think they need the weed for medicine. I think that's just an excuse to buy legally and not get in trouble. I'm out there in the market and I see what's going on. And for the owners, they make millions of dollars.
SubhanAllah.
Yeah,
So it's not even about the medicine. It's all about just I can go there and buy it legally without getting in trouble. Like I said, I'm in the market, I'm out there in the service. I don't know one person that really needs weed
Allah understands.
to solve any kind of medical problem.
Yeah, I don't claim to know from a healthcare perspective on what ailments have really been clinically proven. You know, in my research, I've only scratched the surface. There are some fatwa where people write to ulama, and they write to some of these authorities, and they say that I've been prescribed it, and they're asking about the permissibility of it. They've been prescribed it by a physician. And I've also known people in my family, my wife's family, who, because of a very, very serious illness and a great deal of pain, it has been prescribed to them. Now the question that we have to ask, if we are ourselves someone to whom it has been prescribed or we relate to somebody, is are there alternatives? And one of the fatwa that I read, the person said, I've been prescribed this, and there are some, or there is one alternative, but it has very, very serious side effects. Very serious side effects. And you guys, I'm sure you guys have like seen how they advertise this medicine. And the medicine is supposed to, for example, remove like eczema, like severe eczema. But it can cause a heart attack and stroke and this, that, and the other. I'm saying to myself, I'd rather have eczema. You guys see that? So similarly, some of these people have neurological conditions. There may be something on the market, but it can cause early onset Alzheimer's. They can cause heart attack, stroke. It can cause other very serious things. And it's the harm of these outweighs the harm of. So I can't say unequivocally that no. People don't need that. They're just pretending. I can't say that. But I will say that there are certainly people who may use medicine as a cloak to do something haram. We don't dispute that. That's why I mentioned the khutbah. Some people might say, oh, it's medicinal. It's medicinal. You can't prescribe it for yourself. You can say, oh, man, I had a hip replacement. And it's killing me, man.
Also, some people smoke the wrong stuff and they go crazy too.
And that's another thing, too. You have a lot of what synthetic marijuana is out there. And that was very, very common when I worked in corrections. That was very common, and you don't know what they're putting in stuff. And there are people who actually, exactly, they have, they've been subjected to severe brain damage because of taking that type of stuff. So a person has to be very, very careful about that as well. Like any other?
CBD oil.
Huh?
CBD oil.
The CBD is not an intoxicant. It's not a narcotic. And so therefore, it is permissible. That's what the scholars say. It's permissible and it's tahir. Hashish is tahir, but it's not permissible because it's intoxicant. CBD is not an intoxicant. And so therefore, if it's an oil that you rub on yourself, or if it's something you actually consume, it's not an intoxicant. And no matter how much of it you consume, you'll never get intoxicated. CBD is not an intoxicant, so therefore, the scholars consider it permissible. تفضل معروف.
Maybe I didn't hear what you mentioned that Rasulullah said that there's no medicine in any kind of intoxicant, right?
Yeah, that's the hadith of Salama,
Salama.
in which the Prophet ﷺ, he said, مَا جَعَلَ اللَّهُ شِفَاءَكُمْ فِي مَا حَرَّمَ عَلَيْكُمْ. Allah has not made the cure, your cure, in anything He prohibited. And that's a very strong evidence to push back against people who say medicinal anything. But the exception to that rule would then be what? Al-darura. It would be what? Necessity, extreme necessity. The other question too that I've always had about this issue, this debate, is I don't think the scholars, I'm sorry, not scholars, I don't think medical experts say that any of these things can treat anything, but rather it can what? It can mitigate symptoms. It can relieve pain. And my question has always been, and obviously the Fatawa go against this, the question I have in my head. And I always try to defer to the people who are more knowledgeable, but the question I've always had is, okay, if it's not really treating the illness, just mitigating pain, it shouldn't be, that's just what occurs to me. It shouldn't be permissible. Because again, the exception of darura should be for something that can actually cure, right? Or move you toward what? A shifa, move you toward a shifa. And when it comes, for example, to opioids and these pain medications, they are not trying to cure you. They're not saying that this illness is going to go away. They're just saying what? This will make you feel better. You guys see that? And so Allah knows best, maybe I'm just not seeing it all the way, but I've always had that question. Huh? Oh, I understand why they're prescribing it. I understand part of the reason why they're prescribing it. But it's also something that does mitigate pain. People have very, very severe pain.
I mean, there's definitely a need for it sometimes. I mean, but when the doctor gives you, or the hospital, they give you a small dose, a few of them, and to cure yourself or to get rid of the pain, and after that you should stop.
Yeah, that doesn't happen though. I mean, you got to figure one of the things that we have right now is the opioid crisis. And so what happens is people get, like, for example, a very, very serious car accident, broken neck, broken spine, right? They're just decimated structurally, and there's so much pain. You got to figure it's not just the broken bones; it's all the nerves that are now being what? That are being pressed and squozen and etc. or squeezed, right? So this person is just always in pain. And so the doctor will prescribe, opioids. They'll have to prescribe, a pretty hefty dose to get that person to a point where they can what? They can feel pain-free or almost pain-free. But the problem is when they give them that hefty dose, they become what? Addicted. And you've got people who are so addicted, they'll actually through therapy and other things, they'll start to feel better. And they'll go and get into an accident on purpose.
Just get it back.
In order to what? To justify getting another prescription of what? Of opioids. You got people who are addicted to opioids breaking the pharmacy. And so this is the problem too that we have to also be aware of as Muslims is that if the harm, addiction, outweighs the benefit of the pain relief, then we gotta look for other options, other alternatives. And it's not an easy question to answer. I don't want to oversimplify it. I just wanted to stress and emphasize, which was to your point, that many people will say medicinal purposes. It hasn't really been prescribed for them. They just have heard that it can treat certain illnesses, can relieve certain aches and pains, and they use it as an excuse to what? To do the haram. And this is what we need to avoid. We need to avoid that. We need to avoid giving ourselves an excuse to do the haram. And that's why that's what we're stressing and emphasizing in the second part of the khutbah. Any questions? Tafadhal, Rabi. Yes, sir.
I mean, this is a really good question, but something that I found out was that people actually go to a doctor's office. So people will actually go to a doctor's office and say, I have this problem and it might be severe anxiety. Mm-hmm. And they will suggest that maybe I can try marijuana and see if that works.
Yeah, again, the thing for us is whatever they're prescribing, especially if they're prescribing something haram, we have to check those boxes. Is this really going to treat? Don't throw darts at the board and see what sticks. That's not what we don't do that. They might do that as non-Muslims who don't have any faith and any morals, etc. If I go to a doctor and there's some clinical evidence that this thing that he's prescribing can treat what I have, that's different from, well, some people have tried it, it's worked for them. Anecdotal data, we can't base it on that. As Muslims, we can't do that. And so therefore, again, remember we said that it has to be clinically proven, there has to be some evidence that this haram thing can actually treat the darura, or the cause of the necessity, right? It has to be able to treat that. If it can't treat that, then we're not allowed to partake of it. Like any others. Tafadhal, Dr. Ismail.
I think just an observation, Afghanistan has been
Bring the mic to you.
Afghanistan has been a supplier of opium worldwide,
Hey,
and that has been one of its cash crops for imports, exports. And it's so prevalent that even in India, smaller children are,
wow.
when we was very young, if the baby does not sleep and keep on crying, they give opium.
Wow.
This is, has been going on for a long time, so it's very prevalent. It's not necessarily only in the non-Muslims who do it, but I think as a matter of fact, the cash crop for Afghanistan has been for a long time. Okay.
Ajib.
Just an observation.
Hey, thank you for that. Thank you for that. Jazakallah khair. That was informative. We need that. Okay, let's go here and then we'll go there.
What is the opinion on narcotics in Islam?
Wow, that was...
Narcotics in Islam?
Yeah, that's what we were talking about the whole time. The Prophet said in the hadith, كُلُّ مُسْكِرٍ خَمْرٍ وَكُلُّ خَمْرٍ حَرَامٍ. He said every intoxicant, everything that inebriates, everything that befogs the mind, everything that causes your faculties to be impaired, is called in Islam, called khamr. It's called an intoxicant, called a narcotic. And every narcotic is haram.
Yeah, but narcotics aren't medicine. They are prescribed to be medicine.
I'm sorry?
Like narcotics are medicine, they also have ridiculous side effects. So should they be avoided?
Give me an example of narcotic. Maybe
Oxycodone.
Huh?
Oxycodone.
Oxycodone. Okay, what is it made from?
It's made from opium, but
it's
it
an
is
opium.
a medicine.
It's an opioid, right?
Right.
Does it matter if they give it a fancy name? At bottom, what is it? It's a narcotic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter if they put it in a pill, give it a fancy name. At the end of the day, that's the same thing if they put marijuana in a pill and it had THC in it. THC is the intoxicant. It would be what? It would be haram because it's an intoxicant. It's something which what? Befogs the mind, impairs the senses, it inebriates. So that applies to everything. It's a general rule. That's the beautiful thing about Islam. Doesn't matter how things evolve and change and what names people give things. That's the other thing too, is our religion is what's beautiful about our religion. And what we have to be cognizant of here in the West, because the West has a tendency to do this, and the shaitan, it's a usloob shaitani. It is a devious, devilish, satanic approach to everything. It is changing the name of something to make it what? To make it seem acceptable. So for example, instead of calling alcoholic beverages what they are, intoxicants, they call them spirits. You guys see that? Instead of calling interest usury, they call it what? Benefit. Fa'ida, right? Or fawaid. I say all this to say is that it doesn't matter what you call it. At the end of the day, what does it do? What category does it fall in? Does it fall into something that can impair you, inebriate you, can befog the mind? Then it what? It's impermissible. And the fact that people prescribe it doesn't make it necessarily legal unless what? We talked about the exceptionals, the case of what? Extreme necessity. And again, we mentioned the boxes you have to check in order for it to be necessity. All that clear?
Sort of. So narcotics are just not Islamic, not allowed in Islam? Any narcotics?
Yeah, that's what the Prophet said. He said every. That doesn't make any exception. Like,
Assalamu
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So I know we talked about smoking marijuana, but how about like smoking period, like cigarettes, vapes, and all that?
Ahsant. Like obviously, cigarettes are not a narcotic, right? They don't make you high, and vape pens and all that don't make you high. So when the Prophet says, for example, he says that if a person consumes khamr, consumes a narcotic, his prayer will not be accepted for 40 days. When he says every intoxicant is khamr and every khamr is forbidden, that doesn't apply to smoking, but that doesn't mean smoking is not haram. Smoking is haram because it's harmful. It harms you, and the Prophet said, "La darar wa la dirar." Don't harm others and don't do harm to self. And one of the ways that it harms you is that it has been clinically proven to be cancerous. It's a carcinogen, right? Tobacco is a carcinogen, especially the way they process it. And it causes all types of cancers. And cancer is generally what? Deadly. So the person who smokes is basically doing what? They're killing themselves. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ, and do not kill yourself. So even if they kill themselves a slow death, they're still killing themselves. And so smoking is haram. A lot of people, they think smoking is just makruh. It's something which is what? It's just simply disliked. Something disapproved of by the sharia, but it's not something haram, not something sinful. But it is. And they think the reason why it's haram, and even some of the early scholars who didn't really understand, the reality of smoking, they considered it makruh because what? They said because of what? The smell, the foul smell. So that's an additional layer of what? Of what makes smoking something which Muslims should stay away from, the smell. But the more important thing is what? The harm that it causes to what? To the individual. And it's a harm that could reach the point of death, right? Or severe what? Or severe injury to one's body. And so because of that, it is prohibited. And vaping is even what? Even worse because it's more toxic. It's more toxic, yeah. And it's more addictive as well. It's more toxic and more addictive. تفضل معروف, and then we'll go to...
Just a quick comment. Like if also when you pray close to somebody who's smoking, the breath is smoking.
What's that?
If you're praying like close to somebody who's smoking, the breathing is harmful.
Yeah, it's a very bad smell. And we talked about that in the khutbah as well. Because we wanted some people are addicted and it's not a switch they can turn off. They're not going to hear this khutbah and then never smoke again. Some of them are addicted. It's going to take them some time to kick the habit. They have to understand that when they're going to come to the masjid, there's a certain way they have to what? Cleanse themselves. They can't come to the masjid and their hair and their clothes and their breath smells like weed. And it what? Yu'dhi. It offends the people. You can't breathe. And it doesn't just offend the people, it offends who? The angels. It offends the angels. تفضل عبد الملك. بارك الله فيك يا شيخ.
يعني كنت أناقش المدخل من قبل وقال في القرآن من البداية للنهاية لا ما فيه كلمة صريحة أو كلمة صريحة تدل على التدخين في القرآن.
التدخين.
لكن الآية ولا تلقوا بأنفسكم بأيديكم إلى التهلكة. نعلم أن التدخين يهلك النفس. هذا دليل نستخدم الآية ولا تلقوا بأيديكم إلى التهلكة.
والله بعضهم قد استدلوا بهذه الآية، لكن الآية الأحسن دليلا أو دلالة هو ولا تقتلوا أنفسكم، لأنهم اختلفوا في معنى وفي تفسير ولا تلقوا بأيديكم إلى التهلكة، لأنهم قالوا إذا نظرت إلى سبب نزول الآية نزلت في أناس لم يتصدقوا، فكأنه يقول لا تلقوا بأيديكم إلى التهلكة بأي شيء بمنع الصدقة. عرفت؟ فلذلك الآية الأحسن استدلالا على تحريم التدخين ولا تقتلوا أنفسكم، لأنك إذا شربت الدخان رويدا تقتل نفسك. هنا. So basically Abdul Malik, he mentioned that he's had discussions with people who smoke, and he would tell them that they shouldn't smoke, and the reason why they shouldn't smoke is because Allah says, and do not throw yourself with your own hands to your destruction. And he said, is this a good verse to use to prove to them that they shouldn't, because you're destroying yourself by smoking. And I said, you could use that. Some people have used that. But because the verse was revealed regarding something specific, it was talking about people who didn't give charity. And so Allah is basically telling those people, don't throw yourselves to your own destruction by what? By prohibiting or refraining from giving charity. It might not, because of the actual meaning of the ayah based upon the context, it might not be the best ayah, but we do have the verse that says, don't kill yourselves, and the person who smokes is slowly but surely killing themselves. Any other questions, comments, or critiques? تفضل شيخ. Yes, absolutely. I'm sorry, أخي. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
You mentioned CBD is not.
Hey. تفضل شيخ.
It's not intoxicant.
Hey.
But CBD is cannabinoid.
Yeah, but it doesn't have the.
Cannabinoid is a group name for hemp.
Right.
Which is weed. Pretty much like what we're talking about.
Hemp.
Cannabis.
Go ahead.
Cannabis sativa.
Hey.
That's the.
Understood. Understood.
So we just said that cannabis is intoxicant.
No, cannabis isn't. So cannabis is a plant, and it has many I guess subplants in its family, and those plants have certain chemical compositions or elements in them. Some of them intoxicate, some of them don't intoxicate.
But the major chemical composition of cannabis is cannabinoids.
I understand
Which
that.
are the intoxicants.
No, the intoxicant, according to the studies, is THC. THC, when that is present, that's what gives off the intoxicant. If THC is removed, the intoxicating properties are also removed.
Okay.
So
I'll make you sacrifice.
Yeah, please do that. Yeah, please do that, because I did read up on that leading up to this. I did some pretty good reading on that. And CBD and THC are not the same thing. THC is that element that has the intoxicating element in the cannabinoids. Yeah. So if it's free of that, doesn't mean it won't lose the name, right? It won't lose the name. It will still have the name, but it loses the property. When THC is removed, it loses the property that causes intoxication. Not a chemist, but that's what the chemist said, right? That's what the chemist said. Roughly. Any other ones? I'm sorry. Hussein, you had a question, and then Ibrahim.
So for painkillers, for example, that we get a lot of gelatin.
Like Tylenol?
Like Tylenol,
Yeah.
That contains gelatin. And you know, like gelatin is made of pork and
Yes.
So what's the meaning of that? And also like for multivitamins and stuff, which are less
important. For gel caps, the best thing a person can do is avoid gel caps and find whatever he's trying to get in terms of supplements or even over-the-counter painkillers. Find those in tablet form. That's the best thing. Not every gelatin is pork-based. There is fish gelatin, there is vegetable gelatin. But if it doesn't specify, you have what? You have doubt. And it's better to leave what you doubt for that which does not make you doubt. A lot of what you see, a lot of companies which produce supplements, particularly like multivitamins, stuff like that, they offer vegetable caps, right? Vegetable caps. Understanding that what? A lot of people, or kosher caps. So this is what we should try as best we can as Muslims.
And in fact, there is a pharmacy, Tab Pharmacy. Tab Pharmacy. The brother puts the sticker on every lunch box.
MashaAllah, tabarakallah.
Yeah, every Friday. That pharmacy only sells halal.
MashaAllah, tabarakallah.
So this is a good service, and the brother is here every week. And if you buy lunch, you will get the address from that. And we should be going there.
There you go.
Hey. Everything over the counter?
Everything they have there is halal. If it is haram, they'll tell you, but I've never had experience of haram.
MashaAllah, tabarakallah.
All their tablets are vegetable or gelatin that's halal.
So, I mean, there you go. But what I will say, if they don't have something there, because I agree with him, whenever there's a Muslim in business, we should try to patronize. So I agree with Dr. Adam. I said, thank you for sharing that, Dr. Adam. But let's say, for example, you're going to get something that they don't have there, some type of supplement. So for example, you're gonna get sea moss. And they have a powder form, and it comes in one of those, it's like gel caps, right?
Absolutely.
Usually you can find, for example, you go on Amazon, you'll find like 50 different sea moss, and a bunch of those will be what? Veggie or kosher. And you just get one. Get the one.
Amazon supports Israel.
Huh? I'm sorry, I'm just kidding. My bad. So you're gonna go on some other site, right? But the point is that you look for the one that makes you not doubt. As the Prophet said, doubt my yadibu ila mala yadibu. As it relates to painkillers like Tylenol and stuff like that, they usually have gel caps, but they also have just the tablets. Get the tablet instead of the gel cap. You may not get as quick a release, but you'll avoid any doubt about the hormone.
In case you don't find, and it's a painkiller, can we say right now it's like daruma?
It depends if there's no alternative, and the pain is very, very severe, especially if it's been prescribed for you, if the pain is very, very severe.
It's like a headache or something.
And like a migraine or something like that?
Like
or just a regular headache? You said you don't find? You don't find, what do you mean? Like right at that moment you went to the store, you went to one store and you didn't find it?
Yeah.
Hey, I wouldn't say that's the rule or why, because you can just go to another store. You're gonna find tablets somewhere. That's what I would say, percent. Just avoid it as much as you can. You're gonna find tablets somewhere. I'd follow like Ibrahim will make it the last one, brother. Last but not least.
BC powder.
Huh?
BC powder.
That's very
BC powder. It's a powder form.
Power aspirin?
That's quicker than it's already broken.
very, very absorbable.
And aspirin is the
Okay, you need to connect with
BC
him
powder.
afterwards, because I don't even know about that. I'd follow Ibrahim, go ahead, I'm sorry. I'd follow. Walaikum salam.
I missed the preaching. I was somewhere after marriage. So I don't know exactly what the man said about the preaching. I just heard talking about smoking. And I want to give a little bit advice about smoking.
Okay.
Me, I'm a chief smoker. I started smoking at the age of 15 years. Back home. And some Muslims back home said smoking in our language, means there's no sin on smoking, there's no blessing on smoking. So people can smoke. But to me, as a Muslim and every human being, smoking is 100% haram. Because I'm saying this of what happened to me. 2021, I got sick. I'm a chief smoker. I got sick here. This my hand and this my leg all shut down. So they sent me to hospital. Doctor showed me what is going on around my heart. He said, if you don't stop smoking, I'll give you 2 or 3 months.
Wow.
You'll be there. I'm scared. So when I came home, all the secret which I have, I'll give it out. So if you smoke as a Muslim or every human being, please, it's not good for your health. Smoking is haram. It's pure haram for every human being. It's haram.
Shall we pray?
Is this a specific discussion just about smoking? Because occasionally I'll smoke CBD because it's one more effective than taking it by a capsule for inflammation. But there will be people that also take anti-inflammatories daily in the trades, and the anti-inflammatories destroy their bodies as well. And I would say more rapidly.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, I kind of came to this discussion late. I don't know if it's specifically about marijuana or just substances in general that lead to one's death.
No. Basically, I think people were interested in some of these side issues. So the main issue we were talking about in the khutbah was smoking weed, smoking marijuana, And we're talking about that because it's particularly concerning for us as Muslims in general, in terms of its legality or its illegality in our religion, and also in terms of the effect it has on us as individuals and the effect it has on us in our mosque in terms of the smell, which is intolerable for many. So that's what we're talking about. But some people asked about some of these other things which came to their mind. That's it.
Oh, sorry.
No, you don't need to apologize. Jazakallah khair. Thank you for asking. You guys ready to pray? Let's pray. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه.
I missed something, bro. You said it was 40 days your prayer is not accepted. When you do what?
When you drink alcohol, but it also applies to all narcotics.
It's not accepted fully.
But you still have to pray. You still have to pray.